since you were in state government, Secretary of A&F, Actor, or Salucci, many of the back office functions like IT, purchasing, legal, and HR have been consolidated. So, where do the savings come from?
You know, Bob, that's interesting because when I talk to people who actually serve folks in public human services, the message, I mean, I didn't make up this stuff with regard to the number of different policies and approaches that the state has with regard to net administration and coding and authorization and billing and intake and rating and reporting and some of those other things. And I got those from conversations I've had with people who actually provide services to folks with disabilities. And the message I've heard from them over and over again is they think state government is more complicated, more regulated, and less user-friendly now than it's been at any point in time. So it may be that some of those functions may have been consolidated, but the product of that consolidation is not translated into a simpler, easier, and clearer way of doing business. And that for me would be a primary agenda straight out of the gate, because I actually am one of these people who thinks that until you create a unified approach and a comprehensive and integrated approach to health and human services, those agencies will always be working across purposes with one another, and we'll never get to the point where we truly leverage what one agency does and what another agency does to maximize the return for the people who are supposed to be served.
You used a couple of words, though, in your opening presentation that I think probably strike a little bit of fear in the hearts of some of these folks out here, whether they're providers of services or recipients of services. When you talk about streamlining and you talk about consolidation, how do you merge agencies with distinct missions without affecting the services that they deliver, when, in effect, consolidation is specifically designed to cut the amount of total money available for services?
I think of it a little differently, Bob. I think there's what we spend to administer, manage, oversee, monitor, enforce, and regulate what we do in health and human services. And then there's what we actually spend on the services themselves. And Massachusetts spends a tremendous amount of money on the former, and I believe should be spending most of its money on the latter. And when I talk about consolidation, I'm talking about consolidation that would be done in conjunction with a lot of the folks who are involved in the health and human services community. I don't think about this as the kind of thing that would be done on a unilateral basis. I think about it as the kind of thing that would be done on a collaborative basis with a lot of the folks who see and know and understand what's going on the ground. I mean, I had a person in my office the other day. I've known him for years. I've known him going all the way back to when I worked in health and human services in state government. And his message to me was very simple. It was, right now, state government is cutting programming at the expense of cleaning up its own operation and its own bureaucracy and its own way of doing business and making things harder and more complicated for people who want to serve folks with disabilities. That, to me, is a problem, and it ought to be a first response to dealing with a fiscal crisis and not the kind of thing that's the last response. It's easy to say there's no place to go and no place to cut. I'm sorry, but there are huge opportunities to consolidate administrative activities within health and human services and to get serious about creating one way of performing a lot of these administrative functions. And we ought to be pursuing that before we cut programming, period. And we haven't been for the last few years. Instead, bureaucracy basically operates as it has been, and instead what we've been doing is cutting programming. I think that's exactly backwards.